Since we're testing out the video equipment here, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got started on the El Farol? Because nobody ever believes me when I say you started the El Farol.
Well, I realize they don't, because the old Canyon Road Bar, which was really a mess, but it was a very active bar. But it was there, of course, before the El Farol. But there was no El Farol before 1963 when we started it.
Well, I mean,
And we started on the corner of
Right.
Camino del Monte Sol and Canyon Road. The bar was next door, not next door, there was one business in between. And then the old Canyon Road Bar was there. And then we made a deal actually with the guy that ran that.
well, the Canyon Road Bar is where the El Farol is now.
That's where the El Farol Bar is now. And it also expanded into the whole thing.
Although they
Yeah.
gave up the part where you guys originally started
Originally,
the restaurant, because
yeah,
that
they did.
became a German restaurant, a couple other
Oh, it's
things
been
too.
several unsuccessful things. In fact, Liz Taylor's son had a coffee house there for a while.
Really?
Yeah, Michael Wilding. That's Liz Taylor's son. He has lived in Santa Fe for many years.
Yeah, he actually was in a couple movies. I
Well,
think.
he was Michael is a very, very striking, Hollywood-looking man, and he's married to Jack Palance's daughter. And they moved.
That's right, because I used to see Jack Palance in
met
the
him.
restaurants every now and then.
Well, yes, but you met him when we were in the rodeo parade.
Well,
We were getting
right.
ready, and then this.
I'd actually seen him before.
Yeah.
Matilda and I had seen him eating at a restaurant, and I'm like, that really looks like Jack Palance.
Oh, I don't
Palance
tell.
up there.
Nobody
But-
else looks like Jack Palance, but
Yeah.
Jack Palance. And strangely enough, but when we both met him was when you had the truck and you were in the rodeo parade
Right,
and
you were
playing
playing in
music,
the back
and
of
I
that
was
truck.
driving.
Yeah, yeah.
And this guy walked around the corner and said, "Do you mind if I looked at it?" Suddenly I realized it was Michael Wilding, but he said, "Do you mind if my father-in-law leans on your truck until they picked him up," because he was the parade marshal.
Right.
And so I just had to laugh because I said, "I don't think I would have the nerve to turn Jack Palance down." But he came a really, really very nice gentleman. And
But going back to the El Farol, and so Wilding, his son, had something on that corner too.
yeah, but honey, it was long, long after
And
the El
unrelated to
Farol.
the El Farol.
Yeah, it was a long time after that. There were 2 or 3 other businesses, and then he was a realtor in Santa, sold real estate, and didn't have to do anything, of course. But he was ran that little. We went in several times and talked with him because that's where the El Farol had started. And
Well, so another thing, it's amazing how many times I've gotten into discussions about this or arguments with people about the history of the El Farol, and I keep looking at them and going, well, what part did you not hear about my dad starting the restaurant? But it's like, they'll tell you more stories about it that are completely untrue, and you'll be like, no. How did the name come about?
Well, the name came about because we were ready to open. We were ready to open the restaurant. We had no name. Didn't have a clue what we were going to call it. And our friend, Andre Rapol, who was, this is a whole story. Andre is a whole story in himself. I mean, period. I mean, I could go on for hours about Andre. But he was a Spanish count, had gone to school with Juan Carlos, unbelievable family, which we all later met, remember, in
When we were in
Barcelona.
Barcelona,
He
we were
was
living there, yeah.
very famous family in Barcelona. And he was working as a bellman and a waiter at the Desert Inn.
Oh, Desert Inn.
Yeah, and no one had any idea that he was Spanish royalty. Had a PhD already, and was a waiter and a bellman. And he spoke. He was a linguist, but he never spoke Spanish there, and he always spoke French. They just called him Frenchy. Everybody thought he was a Frenchman. Well, that's another part of the story. But anyway, he knew that we were start opening the restaurant. So he said, "What are you going to call it?" I said, "God, we don't have a clue. We don't have a clue what to call it." So he said, "Oh, call it the El Farol." He was a big, handsome dude, just very austere, very professorial. He was a college professor. Of course, when I met him in Munich, strangely enough, he was head of the language department at the Bavarian University.
That's
in,
when we went to
Munich.
Europe that
When
first
we
time.
went to Munich, and I spent the day with him out.
When I was a kid.
Yeah, listening to the students come by and address him as Professor Herr Ripoll, Professor Ripoll. So it was always really funny because here, after the history that we had together in Santa Fe, and then that's typical of Santa Fe. Once I got to Santa Fe, worked at the Piccadilly, of course. Rosalie brought me there. But after that, it was just a continuous day after day of meeting some of the most interesting people on the planet. And it was people that I would never had an opportunity to meet had I gone to some other place. But
Well,
go ahead.
a lot of those people actually became customers at the El Farol early on.
Absolutely. After I left I loved the Piccadilly. It was absolutely a part of my life that I'll never forget. And always appreciate the fact that Rosalie and her husband actually literally brought me there, which is another story. I would never been in Santa Fe, probably. I'd never heard of it. Knew nothing about Santa Fe. But anyway, I just wanted to do something on my own. I could have stayed there forever and maybe even taken over the restaurant. They talked about it, but I really wanted to do something on my own. And Bob Young, that I had gone out west, we were in high school together. Weren't really good friends in high school. We both ran in different directions, but we got together and went west together.
That was in Illinois.
Yeah, in Illinois, in Salem. We went, left there and went to Colorado, and then that's here again. It's a whole another story here. But anyway, we were together in Santa Fe. So we had actually, it was funny, we had no idea what the hell we were going to do, really. And we both, Bob had been a cook and he had worked in restaurants there, and I'd been at the Piccadilly. Learned an awful lot. And then I also worked as a chef briefly in Colorado, up in not Aspen, but in,
What's it called? City?
yeah, no, not Central City. But it was up in Grand Lakes. I started off at Grand Lakes.
It was in the Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah,
area.
then I went over to Estes
Park.
That takes a little while. But anyway, I learned a lot up there and ran the big resort kitchen at the end of the season, which they just turned over to me because they trusted me, and the chef left and went somewhere else. But so we both had a lot of experience in working in the restaurants and everything. So it was we had no fear in doing it. But I mean, the possibility of being successful, we had absolutely no idea. But the funny thing is that, so we found, we were driving all around looking for a place in this little restaurant. This wasn't a restaurant at the time. It was just it had been a gallery, and it had Bill Tate's, he was a judge. And he had his office in there.
I knew it was a law
office. It was a probate
or something.
judge, it was Bill Tate, who went on to write lots of books and was quite a really, really well-known painter and a famous Santa Fe character like so many others. So it was for rent, and I think it was like, oh my God, it was like, I don't remember what we paid a month, maybe $150 a month for the first, and it was less. We rented the building for less than we were both. I had an apartment and Bob had an apartment. So the rent was less for the business than it was
For your apartment.
for our apartment. So we said, it was so funny. So we rented it. People gave us so much. It's unbelievable when you think that we didn't start that, when people think we didn't start that restaurant. The stories are absolutely unbelievable. The people who wished us luck, who came and helped us, and one guy gave us the 3-tub sinks, and the stories are just endless about that place.
Well, the one I remember is the one where you had to get your food for the first opening night.
This is something it's a one of a kind. Nobody would believe it, but it's so funny because up and down the street, all the people, we had long hair and beards. It was a 63, and we looked like a couple old hippies, but we were well dressed and hardworking hippies, and we weren't the commune type. We were loners and creative people on our own. So, but everybody up and down the street said, well, it's really funny because those two guys, they'll go broke before they'll go broke in 6 months. And we both laughed because we said, we can't go broke. We have no money. You can't go broke. And no one would have really loaned us any. Friends would have. But we didn't want it.
Right.
So we didn't have any money. But anyway, on a Monday, we were opening. We were ready to open that evening. And so we went down to Connie's, which is the best, was always the best store. Wonderful, wonderful store in Santa Fe forever. Everyone went there. Could meet people from all over the world in Connie's who lived in Santa Fe. And so we went down there, and of course knew Mr. Connie very well, and Julie, his daughter. But anyway, we pushed this cart. We went around and got the stuff in our cart, just it was brim full. And we pushed it up to I went especially to Mr. Connie. I didn't go to Julie, but to Mr. Connie. And he was all happy. He said, "Oh, I hear you guys are starting a restaurant up on Canyon Road." He said, "Oh, I wish you all the success in the world." I said, "Well, we're going to work hard at it, and let's hope for the best." And he said, "Well," and so he said, I said, "Mr. Connie," I said, "I have to ask you." I said, "Can I write you a check?" And he looked at me. He was a real tall gentleman that was always at the cash register. Looked down at me. He said, "Ben," said, "is it any good?" And I said, "No, not now." He said, "Write it." So I wrote the check. He took the check and he folded it in half and put it in his shirt pocket. He said, "Let me know what it is." The next night, we went back to the same process, walked up to the cash register with 2 huge things full of food, meat, everything, steaks, everything. And I said, "Mr. Connie," I said, "can I write your check?" And he looked down at me and he said, "Yes." He said, "Is it any good?" And I said, "Yes, Mr. Connie, and that check you have up there in your shirt pocket is good." We made money from the first night we opened, which is absolutely impossible. No one in a home-owned grocery store or a filling station or anything, or a restaurant ever probably, made money from the night we opened. And people they were so good to us, that old friends and people that we'd known, and people I had known at the Picadobe, all old timers, they all came. I mean, the names are endless. I mean, people.
All right, let's stop for now, because Matilla's over there and dinner's ready, but
Oh,
that'll give you
okay.
a chance to play with some stuff, and we'll see what we got.
That's enough.
Well, but I mean, eventually we can put together something.
We're ready.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'm hungry.
Me too. Going on.
You guys are gonna be in charge of cutting the bird?
Matilda, you can stay down here with me if you would.